The Germans learned much from peaceful contact with the Romans. Their cities and towns grew in size, they received bits and pieces of Roman material culture through trade, and they recognized the wealth of urbanized civilization. When their own material conditions began to deteriorate, they naturally saw the prosperity and safety of Roman authority as desirable and sought to migrate across the frontier to settle on Roman land. Foreign migrants came peacefully in many cases. For centuries, small groups of these tribes would request passage into Roman territory for any number of reasons, and the Romans would strike agreements with them that involved their peaceful resettlement on land within Roman borders. Generally, these agreements would involve the separation of large groups into smaller ones that would be settled separately, as well as the stipulation that the foreigners had to submit to Roman authority and accept their status as subjects of the emperor. Issues with this system only arose as the migrating groups became larger. For example, when a massive group of Goths showed up at the Danube frontier requesting permission to settle on Roman land, the Roman authorities struggled to deal with the situation. Eventually, the Romans mismanaged the situation by abusing their Gothic migrants, which resulted in their rebellion and the beginning of a years-long revolt that threw the whole Balkan region into anarchy. These migrants were undeniably violent in most cases. However, their violence was not nearly as brutal or all-encompassing as the common assumption holds. They did not simply slaughter thousands and raze entire towns and cities. They were not cold-blooded killers. These were people who needed salvation from existential threats, new homes because their old homes were unsafe, and they were not unnecessarily violent. Their end goal was not to tear down Western civilization on account of their barbarity, but to make new lives for themselves and settle down safely. Most of the destruction of ancient monuments in Rome and other Roman cities was not done by invading barbarians, but by the residents themselves, as they took them apart for their own building projects. Threats? What were the threats that drove these migrant peoples to seek asylum within Roman territory? The Huns, of course. You might remember them from the movie Mulan, 1998, but the Huns were exceptionally brutal. They were a potent and terrifying military force, one that originated somewhere in Asia and began pushing west toward Europe in the 300 CE. All peoples in their path were faced with a choice: stand, fight, and lose, or run and perhaps have a chance at independence.